What's up, everyone? Kwame here. Welcome back to another episode of The Happy Photographer. In today's episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Yahnny. Not only is she an action adventure photographer, sports photographer, but she's also been to 50 plus countries as a solo traveler. In today's episode, we talk about her photography journey, the business side of being a sports photographer, and she gives you some tips and tricks on your next travel photography adventure. I hope you get as much out of this conversation as I did. Yahnny is, like I said before, an amazing person, and I hope she will become a lifelong friend. All right, so we are here with my new friend. We've been trying to schedule this forever, Miss Yahnny. How's it going? I've been wanting to talk to you forever because you have traveled so much. All your pictures I'm looking at on Twitter are amazing, and then I'm reading your blog, reading your Ship 30 stuff. I'm like, if there's someone who's close to Superwoman, Wonder Woman, Superman, super power Marvel, I feel like it's you. You're one of those people.
Oh man, I'm like blushing.
Thank you for doing this. This is so awesome that we can finally connect. And
yes,
talk.
yes.
So how did you get started in photography? Like, what got you interested in photography?
Well, it had a very uninteresting beginning. I had to pick an elective in high school, and but you know what? My father had wonderful cameras because he was a merchant mariner, and he had picked up a few cameras while he was abroad. So he had a Hasselblad. I had no idea what that was. So I was tinkering around with his cameras, and I finally had said to myself, okay, I have to pick an elective. I have cameras that I don't have to pay for because, you had to buy your own camera. Because I got free cameras that I can use, might as well. And that's how it started. But when I started learning the technical aspects of photography and what makes photography art, I was just super fascinated, and I never stopped since then. So I was an athlete as well. So what happened was that whenever I was on doing a race overseas, or it could have been domestic US, I would just bring my camera, take photos. Someone caught wind of me being able to use a camera properly and said, hey, can you help out? There was no glamour to it. It was just like, we need you to help us break down the camera equipment because the value pretty much of it. And then, can you help us? So I was like, all right, fine. So I learned how to scout, how to break down equipment, how to carry equipment properly, how to look for light, especially in a natural setting. So this is where the sports photography came in. I was very fascinated with the fact that you're not in a studio. You pretty much are you have to, all of your work depends on the here and now and lighting. So you have maybe a fraction of a second. It was very difficult for me to master that. And then now here I am years later. That is something I always remember and thankful for, throughout my time as an amateur photographer, was that I had to cut my teeth like a lot of assistant photographers back then. I was doing the drudge work, where I was carrying everyone's equipment, like cleaning everyone's stuff, uploading, sitting in front of like slow laptops, like waiting for waiting for camera. It's like, oh my God, this thing's gonna crash, I'm gonna run out of battery. It's gonna be all my fault. They're all gonna blame me. And then that's how it started. So fast forward from that, I had to, I was living in Philadelphia. I was going back and forth from Philadelphia to New York, and my background was actually in engineering. So I stopped the engineering and then went into my own practice. So I had a firm. It was a risk management and insurance firm. So I had to set aside photography for a little bit because it was just too much. There's photography. I was an athlete. I was an endurance athlete, and I had to pick one, and I had to pay the bills. So I said, oh my God. So here I go. I guess I got to set my love of photography and art aside and do this. And I did. I built a side business while I was doing the risk management insurance. So I love to travel. So I figured, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask some of the people I know in the sports industry if I can go with them and help them to organize trips for their families, the families of athletes.
Yeah.
Because, like the families aren't the one who's competing. And then they're like, and now what? I have to wait for my spouse or my partner or my kid or whatever to return from a really long race. What am I doing in the meantime?
Yep.
So it's like, oh, wow, opportunity right there. So I would help them. I would either be a consultant for the actual race organizer, or I would do it myself. And that was because I love, number one, I love sports, but I also understand how it's like to be an athlete. Also at the other end of it, how to be supportive of the athlete while they're doing their event. So of course I would bring my camera. Yeah. And then it turned into doing two side gigs while I'm doing the risk management insurance stuff. No one knows I'm doing this, by the way. So I didn't even know it, like a side gig, side hustle, like hustle on the side. None of that meant anything to me. I was just doing everything that I thought I loved to do.
Yeah.
And finally it dawns on me how much I miss photography. It's just like, you know what? I'm going to start focusing on this. I'm going to shift my attention. I'm going to give myself an expiration date, basically, to move on and dive in head first. Kind of head first. It's like toes first and then head. So, and at the 15th year of me doing risk management insurance, I was like, you know what? I'm good. If I don't do this, I'm never going to do this. So I incorporated my travel business. By the way, on top of that, I was also hired to be a managing director of a startup in Hawaii. That's how I permanently moved to Hawaii. Okay. So I was with a startup, helping the startup to get off the ground, doing the hiring, creating the overseeing the operations, the budget, doing the photography. Can you imagine? So like now I'm like doing all of this at the same time while I still had the risk management insurance business. So I was managing clients. Can you imagine 11, 12-hour difference, depending on the time of the year, and doing the photography. And it's like, people are like, how the heck did you sleep? I didn't. I was like, to be honest, I did. I was just like, it was just too much. The company finally, got sold. That company got sold. And I made my decision. That was like, do I go into my own business and do my own travel business? Or do I work for someone again and continue to build, the photography on the side? So meanwhile, I'm just like, no, I got to be true to myself. I got to either take this leap or don't take it. And at that time, I was already in my late 30s, and I was just like, okay, so I'm 44 now. And I was just like, okay, all right, I could do this. I can do this. I've been an entrepreneur since my early 20s. Just take the leap. And I did. Yeah. And the moment I did, doors started opening up, because I didn't have a problem telling people, it's just like, I'm traveling, I'm building my travel business, my custom travel business. But I'm also a photographer. And if I'm staying at your, in your hotel or whatever it may be, maybe I can exchange part of the fee for this, for this stay for photography. And it turned out that they liked the photography so much that they would refer me from one person to the next. Nice. So a lot of my travel, while I was building my travel business, my own travel business, was built on the back of being a photographer. The thing that remained consistent throughout my life since I was a teenager. That's how I was able to travel to even more places, more countries, to photograph more races, because so the background for me being an endurance athlete, I was a runner. I got injured in a car accident, and then I got into cycling. I didn't realize how good I could be at cycling, and then I excelled at that, and then became an open water swimmer, triathlete. So I was competing as an elite pro endurance athlete for 6 years on top of everything. So I knew the mentality of athletes and their families, like going with them. So now here I am, at this point in my life where I'm now in Sweden as well. I have an adventure, a custom adventure travel company. I photograph events, so racing and also travel, so races and travel. And then the company that I have here in Sweden does Nordic events, paddling and off-road cycling, and also markets for other companies that are here. So it sounds like a lot. Oh, and writing.
Yeah, well, all the writing you do, yeah.
Yeah, and the writing. So it's just like, so Shift 30 for 30 came into my life this sneaky way, because I would see them all over the place on Twitter. I'm like, oh my God, with this Shift 30 thing. And what's with the little ship? How cute. And so it took me, I would have to say, and I remember writing this, like, how did you hear of Shift 30? It took me about like 2 months to keep seeing their stuff, to be like, maybe I should just do this. Because I started reading like about Nicholas Cole, and his work, and I was really inspired about like how he was just writing every day. He was
Yeah.
just going to work, doing his thing, and he was just like, I'm just going to stay disciplined about this, and whatever come what may, and I'm just going to figure this out as it happens. And there you have it. He one day has like a bad day, and he's just like, I'm just going to post this thing with my picture, and then it goes viral. And then also these guys are so, like, the way that they think, especially with Dickie, the way he thinks is like very analytical, but also creative at the same time.
Yep.
I like the way that they were organized. Like, it's very professional. It's geared towards teaching that is genuine, and really wanting to see that you are getting the maximum, experience that continues even beyond the cohort, making sure that you are staying engaged with all of the people that you met during the cohort, with all of the people that you will meet if you are staying consistent. And they're hammering that into your head after they have like the fire hose, pulled out. They're just like, and now this is the real work, is like staying consistent after you've done all of that stuff. Are you going to put this to practice? And we want you to, because if you put this to practice, you give us a good name, and then it works in this, basically, the circular economy in a way. So in a nutshell, that's how I came about to Shift 30 as well, and with writing and all of that. So it's my life.
I think it's really interesting that you were doing your own business for 15 years while still building up the photography travel on the side, while doing other things. And whenever people ask me like, well, how long does it take to like get better or get good or go pro, I'm always like, keep your day job and just do it like little bits at a time, because you can do it. Like, you can just go all in, but you might as well have like a backup just in case.
Yes. Because I think that when people, entrepreneurship means that you have to take a lot of risks, and the days that are high may not last for a long time, and then you ride on that high for maybe 1 or 2 days, and then something else comes around. So you need to have a stomach for that, and that's not for everybody, especially when something happens, like something might break down, and all of a sudden you're writing a big check for something you didn't realize you had to, and you're like, oh my God, I just caught up. And then, it's just like you see these, you see these videos of like people, these memes, actually, these people are like, oh my God, did my check clear? And then you go like, oh, I just need to again. And the pay and the check is clearing at the same time. And it's hilarious, because when I had my risk management business, I had employees, and to me, it was, oh man, I was paying 50% on their health benefits, payroll taxes, a lease, because I was in the middle of like the business district. It was enormous, the cost that I was always like, oh my God, I gotta pay this again. Wasn't that just like last week?
Yes.
And it's like, what is going? And people don't understand, especially if you're creative, especially if you're a photographer. I'm like, what do you mean you cost that much? I'm like, oh, wouldn't you like to see the process? Wouldn't you like to see the process? Why don't you do it yourself then? And you think like, okay, are phones going to take over, you know, photographers? Are they going to wipe away the art of photography? No, because I still see people with amazingly expensive cell phones with great cameras who take terrible photos. And I'm like, oh, damn. And I should do this one day. And maybe you'll get a kick out of this, is that I've been using a camera phone. Well, because my phone was really old. It was like 6 or 7 years old. And
Yep.
that's the camera phone I've been using. The phone that you see me on now is a new phone, but it's the model that was before. Yeah, it's like an older Samsung Galaxy. Because I love it when people are proving their photography, creativity, and their vision with nothing.
Yeah,
With
exactly.
like they say film, you could do analog. I'm like, no, no, no. You could do film, you could do it's okay. It doesn't matter what medium you're using. It's just it really depends on how you see things and how you
Hmm.
are actually like people who are painters, who design clothing, who's like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's very hard. Like, as a creative, when you're telling people, especially when you want to raise your prices and they're like, oh my God, oh hell no, I'm not gonna pay that much for you for like an hour or a project. I'm like, wait, 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 wait. It's just like, so, like, and people are like, oh well, I'm going to discount it then, that's okay. I'm like, don't. Like, that's the
Yeah,
thing, is just like
exactly.
there are certain things, but then when you are doubting yourself, like, oh, this isn't for me, I don't have a backup, I just quit my job, you know the levels of being risk averse is different for every person. So if
Hmm.
you're that kind of person that can't stomach like the huge highs and really deep lows, low, low, low,
Yeah.
then I'm like, all right, then please keep your job. But for me, when I was an engineer, I hated my life. I was making, just to give you an idea, I was making 80,000 before I even graduated. Because it was like
Wow.
that was the kind of engineering I was in material science and engineering. And
Okay.
it was like, but that would have been my salary for, like, no matter how much you do in that profession, it pretty much stabilizes unless you become, a professor, or you start writing papers, you start becoming published and all of that. But you
Yep.
pretty much, that's like where you are. That's your homeostasis for the rest of your life, is about that much. So if you're living in the city, that's not that, it's you can live okay. But if you live in an expensive city, you're like, oh man, maybe I should move to the suburbs. And a lot of people did.
Mhm.
But for me, it was more important to basically have my freedom, and I was willing to suffer for that. I was willing to not have that 80,000. I was willing to half my salary, and work my way up from there, because I set goals for myself and I said, I'm going to make this much in order to afford my craft, in order to be able to pay back into the business, to make even
Mhm.
more from that business. It wasn't like, I'm going to make some more money so I can travel. Nope. It was like, I'm going to see what I can afford now, and then what I can pay for in order to improve what I do. So I would just go to events, for instance. I would go to sports events, and I wouldn't be one of the media. Literally, I would just be like plopping myself in the middle of this place,
Yep.
taking photos, like with no badge or anything. And I'm getting pushed around, because as a woman, you get like, you get pushed around very, very, very easily. Like, who are you? Especially if you don't have a press pass.
Yep.
And I would do whatever I could to just take the photo, and then pitch. Because, the thing is, like, what entrepreneurs need to do is they need to pitch who they are. They need to tell people who they are. People aren't, even if you are the best photographer, the best artist, the best whoever, the best chef, the best whatever, if people don't hear the sound in that forest, you don't exist. They're like,
Exactly.
who? Who? Just like,
Yep.
and that is the part of entrepreneurship as well that people don't want to accept. They're like, oh, I'm great at what I do. Yes, you are great at what you do, but do people know that you even are there doing what your thing? Like, oh, well, I'm putting myself on social media. That's great. again, though, like in order for you to reach that next level, you need to put yourself out there to the point where you hear more no's than you ever will hear a yes. That one
Yeah,
yes comes from 1,000 no's,
exactly.
being able to stomach that. So for me, like I was able to do that by just by thinking to myself, their no isn't, it doesn't dictate my value. They just don't know yet what my value is. And they don't need to know. But I will find someone by me asking, by me telling my story, by me reaching out to people, by asking for help, by whatever, by asking for an opportunity, you know, those people know my worth. And those are the people who I'm going to work with, because
Yes.
in turn, they're going to give me the opportunity in a space where I'll be able to maximize what I'm able to offer, and that they're
Yeah.
not going to minimize me because they are now going to micromanage everything that I'm doing and not allowing me to give them the best of what I have to give. So that took a while. That wasn't always my mentality. Fear of judgment, fear of perfectionism, that whole thing.
Yeah. How did the pandemic affect your photography? Did it change like for me, all my clients and all my client work literally
Mm-hmm.
within like a week was gone. And
Yep.
then it freed up all this time. And I started thinking, like personally, I realized I was giving so much of my photography and like this creative energy to other people that
Mm-hmm.
once we kind of, now that we're out of it, but when things started opening back up, I started turning down jobs that I would have taken just because like this doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel right anymore. And I just
Mm-hmm.
started taking daily pictures and focusing more on like stuff around the house and like thinking
Mm-hmm.
more long term. So how
Yes.
did it change for you like that? Was there like did you look back and say, maybe this is a great breaking point and
Mm-hmm.
pivot to something different?
It sure did. It sure did. Um, for me, it was always okay. So it was always about how can I take like the best action shot that looks extreme? Like the athlete needs to look like they're suffering all the time, like
Yeah.
and then right now as what I focus on mostly is the connectivity, the interaction of people. Just really even focusing more on their facial expressions. I
Yeah.
think I've gotten more emotional. I've been drawn into the person more and less, and you know what? Less fearful to be in their space. Because I think I wrote about that recently. It's like you got to get into their space and be respectful of their space as well. But talking with them. I mean,
Mm,
as a photographer, you're like way back. You're like 400. You're like, I don't need to get close to you. It's just like, but it's when you now. I just, I mean, what is it? I'm using a 24/7. I need to get in. I need
yeah.
to get in, really intimate with people. I have another lens where it is basically for portraiture. I am literally in their face. And sometimes I'm like, can I please? It feels like street photography, basically. Can I please take your
Yeah.
photo? I feel like I've gotten more emotional. Like I want to take my time being in one place versus like
Yeah.
running all over the place. Like sit here long enough, maybe I'll catch something, you know?
Yeah.
And that has affected me a lot because I in some way felt like that what I was doing as a as a travel photographer, as a sports photographer, was was pointless. Like I went through like this up and down with emotions, like people are suffering and why am I talking about travel? So like
Yeah.
people like family members are dying, like now we're in this going on with like the war in Ukraine and the war in everywhere, every part of this world. I'm like, this is just, this oh my God, what's going on in America? And I'm like, this is just ridiculous. Like I don't even, so a part of my heart feels really heavy, but it also brought together in my head like the importance of what we do as
Yeah.
photographers, how we tell stories, how we can memorialize even the most painful things, and really just like if you just focus on the people, the moment, you can talk about that. And it could be a flicker of an eye, it could be something so small, and that will be forever captured in a photo if you just take the time. And I think in the past, yeah, like I said, it was just always go, go, go. Now I'm just like, no, I have to step back. I gotta slow down and I gotta just wait. I gotta
Yeah.
wait and allow myself to wait and then see what's gonna happen in this moment. That's how it's changed me, I'd have to say. Yeah.
So it made you a more patient
Mm-hmm.
photographer. Like you
Yes.
wanted to see. I remember there's a photographer, Jay Maisel. He's one
Mm-hmm.
of my favorite photographers
Mm-hmm.
out of New York. And I remember him once saying, as a photographer, he's like, the best thing you can do is find a place and just wait. He's like, if you have patience, the world will come to you and you're going to see stuff that walks through your scene and you're going to get shots that no one's going to get because you're just waiting. And I've
Mm-hmm.
always taken that approach. And it's really cool that you're saying the same thing in sports because from my limited time of taking pictures for sports, I was always running around, going up here, going over
Yeah.
here, trying to get this angle, getting up real low, trying to get
Mm-hmm.
high, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like, or just find a spot and like just see what happens.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because there's a husband and wife photography duo that they are just amazing. They're both cyclists and they've turned into professional sports photographers. So you see a lot of their photography now, like with Tour de France, like major cycling events.
Nice.
And the way that they take their photography, you could tell they're perched somewhere, just waiting, and they'll take the photos through like storefronts. They'll stand in a store and they'll photograph people turning their heads really quickly and looking at all the cyclists passing through. And you can feel the energy of the spectators going, wow, oh my God. Instead of, if they were running all over the place, yeah, they would have probably had really great shots of the athletes, but not capturing the intensity of the moment of everybody. Like you could hear the sound of the crowd.
Yeah.
When you take a photo of a photographer and you don't also establish the environment that they're in, you can imagine their pain, you can imagine their suffering, but knowing how other people are affected by those moments, I
Yeah.
think amplifies the intensity. Like just looking at their faces. You see this all the time. Like someone makes an amazing shot, and you could see like courtside seats, like some kids going, oh yeah,
Exactly.
it's like, oh my God. He just like takes a look at that and he's like, oh my God. And it's just like, and you see this all the time in photography, and the best like photojournalism has to do with just capturing the unexpected moments that aren't obvious at the time, where you're like, okay, obviously I'm here and this is a war-torn country, I'm going to capture the war.
Yeah.
But really, how is that environment changing? How is that environment changing the people? Are you able to capture that? How is, out of adversity, can you also show hope? A really good photographer that was known for just sitting in one place and capturing the most mundane, but the shots in the end were just fantastic, is Aragular. He's a Turkish photographer. He passed away, I think, in 2016 or 7, I think maybe 17.
Okay.
And he would just sit, somewhere. It could be a bridge, it could be the street, and it would just be him taking a photo. And I remember he said something really silly. He got profane. He was like, I will sit. Can I curse? Because I
Yeah.
think
Go
he said
ahead.
like
Yeah.
something like, I will, I will, I will sit 1 hour to capture the best shot of that cat. I'm just gonna
Yes.
sit here until that cat gives me the best shot. So to be able to master light, to be able to just master the moment of just waiting, oh my God, I'd have to say that hit home for me during the pandemic.
For
Mm-hmm.
someone who's listening, watching, and saying, look, great, you two, it's amazing. You have worked your way up to where you're at. I'm still sitting here on my couch trying to figure out how to become they want to get into travel photography or sports photography. I think you mentioned it earlier. One of the tips was, and something I did also was, I used to find races, just
Mm-hmm.
go to the race, take pictures, and use
Yes.
Flickr back in the day, tag the
Yeah.
race that I was doing, and then put it on my blog
Mm-hmm.
post, a blog, and like tag them also. Do you
Mm-hmm.
have like a tips or anything you would tell someone who's like, I want to get started, I want to do this, but I'm still working my dead end 9 to 5 job.
Mm-hmm.
What's something that you would recommend to them, to that
I
person?
would take what you just said, and I would also take the Cole approach. Like, okay, so for him, it was like writing once a day for Cora. For me, whenever I am posting something to social channels, and I want an organization or a company to see my work, I have no shame. I will tag them. I will tag them 1,000 times, because you know what? They need to see it 1,000 times,
Yeah.
because they can't keep track of everybody. So it is our responsibility to keep track of them, because there's more of us than there are of them. So I would say keep, mentioning them if you're on Instagram, if you're on TikTok, whatever you need to do to get your work out there and for people to see, tag them. Also, like I said before, they don't know you exist until you put yourself in front of them. So reach out. I know it's really hard for a lot of people to cold call, but guess what? When you are an entrepreneur, you need to get over yourself and you need to reach out to everybody that you can, and have no shame. So, practicing stoicism also has helped me. And, I remind myself to take the emotion out of something that just has to get done. Just get it done, get the task done, get the nasty bits out of the way, and don't attach any emotion to it. It is what it is. Just get it done. And, just the other day, I was saying, okay, I want this article for this event that I'm photographing this weekend to be published. I just started reaching out to e-zines, and I'm like, all right, this is what's going on. I can submit an article for it, and they asked me for samples of my writing, and I'm like, okay, and it's just like, this is just in 2022, so like, I send them, and the thing is, it's like, again, it's just like, you need to put yourself out there. Put yourself out there, meaning reach out to people however you can. And if you're sitting on your couch, if you are watching, if you're doing your 9 to 5, just like Cole did, just like I'm still doing, and I still did, even 15 years having, having my own brokerage firm, I still cold called. I still asked for people to help me. I was like, I don't understand. Like, what's going on? Can you please help me? I never stopped asking for help. So I'd have to say, ask for help, put yourself out there, make it realistic. Just say, okay, if I can only reach out to 3 people today, if it's 3 people, if I can only reach out to 1 person today, it may just be that 1 person. But make it a goal that every day you're doing something that's going to help you be known for the work that you're doing. Because one day someone's going to say, oh man, you know what, we need to talk. Even at that, it still might not be ideal. So therefore, fill that pipeline. Keep on asking, keep on putting yourself out there. And that is the best advice I can give.
So my kid plays baseball, and they have like different roles for the parents. And obviously I picked the photography role. And a parent asked me, he was like, well, how do you, he goes, I think you're born with a creative gene. I was like, God, what are you talking about? He goes, well, you just have I think people who are creative just have an eye for it. I was like, it takes a lot of work. And I compared it to running a marathon. I was like, because I knew he was a runner. I was like, if I decided to go run a marathon tomorrow, I would die. My body would probably shut down. But if I, train a little bit over time, and then by the time the marathon comes, I'm good. When people are telling me like, oh, we're going on this vacation, I'm going to buy this camera, my first response is always, start taking pictures now. Like, get good, learn your camera, just take daily pictures, because they're going to suck. And you don't want them to suck on your vacation, especially if you're going someplace overseas. Do you have any tips for people who are like, hey, we're finally getting out, we're finally traveling. What's something like, what should they expect? What should they do when they're taking travel photography pictures for themselves?
So what I usually see, what people love to do, is that they and it's fine, because it's especially if you're not trained to see it right away. Like you said, it's a marathon. You just got to keep on. You got to do you have to do the work in order to recognize the micro adjustments that are necessary so they improve. So what I see a lot of people do all the time is, like, say you're standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, and then they want to fit the Eiffel Tower there. So but my thing is like, when you're in a place that's really obvious and everyone knows what that is,
Yeah.
trust me, you do not need to fit the entire tower I was just like, capture, like, the moment is captured, the true moment is captured when you focus on the person's reaction. So
Yeah.
I'd have to say, it's like, if they are so happy that they're there, capture that. But don't worry about what's in the background, because trust me, it's obvious. You pull back the camera a little bit, show that, I would have to say, practice the rule of thirds. If that's a
Hmm.
thing that you need to just like put the grid lines on your camera, because almost every camera phone has that now. It's okay. You don't need to do
Yep.
like the Holy Trinity thing. Like, it's just, or it's okay. Like, we don't need to get that creative. But, and also the thing is like, if you are insisting on being that selfie taker, learn how to do it properly. Like, when people start doing this all the time, I'm just like, no, with the triangle. Like, it's like, please practice that. If you are insistent on being the selfie taker at all times, like, stop doing that, because that was like 2000s. It's like, so you
Yeah.
need to stop that. And then, but also what I'd have to say is, first and foremost, you're not taking the photo to be on the front cover of a travel magazine, on the front cover of a fashion magazine. So when people are at things like, okay, I'm going to just now hold this glass of wine and, hold it like this forever, until it's like, okay, you know what? Enough of that. It's just like, this
Yeah.
is, show what you are genuinely doing at the time. And trust me, when you look back at those photos years from now, you're going to be like, oh my God, that was amazing. Not the photo that took you 20 times to get
Yeah.
that sipping the glass of wine perfectly. Because now you're like, oh man. And you probably might not be drinking 20 years from now. So it's like, so my thing is, try to capture the moments that will help you to remember the emotions years from that time. Because
Yeah.
when you are faking a smile, when you are faking the moment, it's like, that is the thing that you will always remember. Yeah, you might look good in the photo, but you also didn't practice how you can look good in any kind of situation. So again,
Yeah.
if you're that person that is insisting on taking the selfie, find out what your good side is. Like, take it from that, make sure that you're always like, just take photos of yourself. Ask someone to take a photo of you. Know how to use the background. And that is, if it's so obvious, that's then you don't have to fight to get like the whole thing in the photo. I think
Yeah.
it's more interesting when you're like, wait a minute, are you in blah blah blah? But if it also, when it comes to families, it's if your kid is rowdy, for instance, and like does not want to take the photo, that's okay. But like, get the kid involved. Give your kid the camera. Give
Exactly.
your
Yeah.
kid the phone, because it's amazing what they see that you don't see, because you're trying to look all perfect. They want to capture something that looks fun. They want to capture something that looks funny even.
Yeah.
And I
Exactly.
think those are the best photos. Give your kid the photo, and they're so good at it. They are amazing. Most of them are amazing photographers. I'm amazed with what kids can take with, like, when it can, relative to what adults can take, because they see, they're not
Hmm.
hindered by perfection. A lot of them are, and that, I think, is the best photojournalism, is in the imperfection. And
Yeah.
it's just like, you can see something was moving, people were moving. So I'd have to say, again, just to recap with the travel photography, learn your good side. If it's an obvious landmark, don't worry about fitting the whole damn thing in your photo. We'll figure it out. Make it fun for people to figure it out. You know, like, if you got like the White House behind you and you want to take the whole White House, like, why do people need to know that how it looks like? There are a bajillion photos of the White House.
Yeah.
The fact that you're there is already, that could be a cool story. Like, why are you there? And give your kid the camera. And if it is just, if it's couples, practice with the person that you're traveling with. ask them to know how to operate your phone, or what good side you have. If it's just you solo, learn how to take a selfie properly, learn how to use a tripod, learn how to not have fear the fact that you're alone and you might have to set up a tripod and then be all awkward, for about a few minutes, like as you're trying to take the best photo. But on top of everything, be genuine. Because really, the whole I'm gonna be like in the magazine front cover of Travel and Leisure. No, you are
Yeah.
not. It's like, so try and remember that, like, be in the moment, and try to stop being an Instagrammer. Like what they say, it's like, stop it, because like
Yeah.
that has left the building a long time ago. And trust me, the most interesting stories and the most memorable moments in life is like when you've captured the real deal.
That's awesome. What
Mhm.
what are you up to now? Like, I know you're about to go head out on another adventure. What else are you up to? What should we be expecting following you on Twitter and Instagram and all the other good things?
So what I am focusing on, what I want to focus more on, and especially, uh, it's just, again, like after the pandemic, is being a woman of color. I think it's super important to me, because all the stories I haven't shared from even growing as a photographer, as a woman of color. On top of that, like literally the amounts of times that I've been pushed to the side because I'm a woman, or not taken seriously because they
Hmm.
can't imagine me being like, okay, why are you doing this profession? Shouldn't you be doing something else? Um, but also at the same time, in sports photography, you don't see too many people that that
Yeah.
look like me, or even you, in sports
Yeah.
photography.
Yeah.
So it's and that's really important. So to try and encourage and the younger generation, or even current generations, but really the younger generation, is like, you know what, you can do this. You can do, like I'm doing this. It's like I'm trying to put my name out there so that I can say, like, this, it's hard work, but if you
Yeah.
really truly believe in your craft and what you're doing and your artistry, then you are going to do whatever it takes, because being a creative is hard. It is really,
Oh
because no
my
one
God.
takes you seriously as we should. Why do you think NFTs started? Because
Yeah.
everyone is copying and pasting your stuff everywhere. So
Yeah.
it's like, even when you say, don't edit the photo when you're using it on social media, and next it's in a square, and you're like, oh God, it's like, and why is it green? Why does it have like a hue of green? It doesn't even have to edit the photo. No one, like, it's hard to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Another thing that I'm working on is, on the travel side, is come October, I have an amazing trip that's coming up in Italy. So I'm trying something new, where before, in the past, I was doing mostly like hardcore adventure stuff,
Yeah.
like, so now I'm going back to another one of my loves, which is food. So I'm incorporating
Ah.
a food this time, like heavy on the food and some physical activity, always with the beautiful vista and history and culture, and sustainability. So I'm an advocate for sustainability. I'm the chapter lead for Impact Travel Alliance in Sweden,
Okay.
and
Nice.
so having to talk about sustainable travel, sustainable living, is something that I'm doing more of as well. So I'll be writing more about that, in sports travel and sports tourism, basically,
Yeah.
as well as with adventure travel and just everyday life. Because to claim that you are advocating for sustainability, you also have to do that in your everyday life.
Yeah.
And continuing to do the photography, to do gigs, to do side gigs, to do stuff for fun. Um, this project that I'm doing in this weekend was basically a self-imposed project. I said, I was like, I
Nice.
want to get more involved with what's going on here in Sweden and networking. So it's also my way of networking, putting myself out there, like I said before. So it's really being in the mix. And hopefully I'll have a chance to come back to the States to visit. Maybe at the end of this year, the beginning of next year. I'll be photographing an event in Florida in December, and then hopefully going back to Hawaii to visit some friends and family, as well as to Philly and New York, and we'll see how it goes.
Very cool. So is the Italy trip, is that going to be like a group trip that you're doing or just a
Yes,
personal?
yes, yes. So that one is it's a small group. So there are 5 spots that are still available. And it's meant to be small. Most of the stuff that I do is 6 people or less.
Nice.
So it is a group. People can come as solo travels, can come as couples. If they want to come with a kid, I wouldn't suggest any kid that's probably under the age of 13 because it's geared more towards an adult experience because there's wine tastings and
Yeah.
cheese tastings, and there's also a master class cooking, and there's a private chef that we will be cooking at his house, on his
Sounds
grounds.
amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah.
Is
So,
everything on your
um,
website? So if I link it, people can find it
yes,
on your website?
everything's
Okay.
Yes,
Awesome.
everything's on the Yahnny website for the Italy trip, and you could find all the information there. So it's being co-coordinated with a fantastic Italian company. They are a destination management coordinator in Italy, and they just do wonderful work. So I'm really excited that this is my first project that I'm doing with them.
That sounds amazing. That's the type of trip. The older I get, so I'm
Hmm.
41, and the older we
Hmm.
get, my wife and
Hmm.
I, we start looking
Hmm.
at like more experiences, not just like, oh, we're
Yeah.
just gonna go travel and aimlessly walk
Hmm.
around.
Hmm.
But it's like,
Hmm.
what's an experience we can do? And for me, it's like, how do
Hmm.
I fit photography? Sneak it in there
Hmm.
always with
Yeah.
me.
Yes.
Last question:
Hmm.
before you, before you became a professional travel photographer, did
Hmm.
you always have a camera with you when you were traveling, or was it travel first and then you started bringing a camera with you?
I always had a camera. I always had a camera, and the thing is, as well, is that um, when I started using a Micro Four Thirds, it was a Lumix G7. And I was like,
Mm.
I gotta try this because, and that was a risk because instead of carrying heavy glass, it's and when you have that, like when you get those bags checked, it is frustrating to go through security and get checked every single place
Mm.
that you go to. So I found that carrying a Micro Four Thirds with me was like, oh my God, it's like they don't care. It's like it's weird. It's like this is a
Yeah.
real camera. It's not a toy. And but to me, I found that it gave me more freedom. I now I because camera phones are or yeah, cameras on phones are better now. I do both. Like I actually challenge myself to take photos with my phone because
Hmm.
it forces me to not be lazy. Because when I'm
Yeah.
taking, well, I mean, like it's yes, clarity might suffer a little bit but guess what? When we were all photographing with film, they were never that clear anyway. So so it's just like so I always have to remind myself that because no one's gonna care how grainy your photo looks.
Yeah.
If it's a beautiful photo, that's what matters. And by the way, you can also do Photoshop, but no, I rarely ever do actually. By the way, it's
Yeah.
just like because my photography is basically photojournalism, so it's just like some of it is Lightroom, but not too much. But I would challenge myself a lot just using my camera on my phone. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah.
I find it to be fun, and
Oh, I
and
agree.
and yeah, and you know what? When people are like, "Don't you got a camera?" and I'm like, when they find out you're a photographer, I'm like, "Yeah, obviously, I'm using it. I'm using it." And what's even more amazing is like when you tell people that you took it with your phone, they're like, "Oh man, you are a photographer."
Yeah, exactly.
It's
I always feel like
different
the
because
pros, not even a pro, but
Mhm,
someone who's just like
mhm.
in tune with their craft, doesn't matter the
Yeah,
tool. Like you can figure
yeah,
out like doesn't matter like the camera. I always tell people the camera is just a tool. Like at the end of the
yes,
day, it's just a tool. Yes, they're
yes.
cool. Yes, they have features
Mhm,
that are really fun, but just a
mhm,
tool. And if this tool works, great. If this doesn't, I will find a tool that will work for me. And it sounds like
mhm.
you do the exact same thing.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think that like, going back to what you had asked before, I'm gonna go like the traveler who's gonna buy the camera for their trip.
Yep.
Well, all right, if you I mean, if you really need to insist on buying They can't, because by the way, if you're trying to get the professional photos, get ready to spend $20,000. You know, it's like, but if you want, like, and I tell people all the time, like, if you really want good photos, just practice at home.
Yeah.
And like, practice making a lot of mistakes, and that is okay. And that is, and don't worry about them being so perfect. But I challenge anybody. Like, I'm going to be going to on this big trip coming up next weekend. I'm going to be leaving next weekend. And yes, am I going to have cameras with me? Absolutely. But you know what? A lot of the footage, it's going to be taken with this phone that I'm on right now, because I'm going to be out at sea. I'm going to be like paddling also along a coastline. You know, so finding a way to charge those batteries while you're, you know, in these kayaks. Also, while you are, you know, without any place, like, I'm going to be in pretty remote areas. It's not going to be that easy to find places to charge. So the best thing I can do is to just use my phone and hope for the best, and take photos sparingly, if that makes any sense, to save my battery. So it's just like,
no, it makes, I totally understand what you're saying. Like, I get it. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been an awesome trip. Obviously, you have to come back and talk about solo traveling, because we didn't even touch, like, I wanted to talk about that, but there's so much that we talked about. So of course, I'm gonna have to have you back on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on. I will leave links to everywhere that people can find your information, especially about the Italy trip. If you can afford it, you guys, that sounds amazing. You should take advantage of it. Thank you as always, and I will talk to you guys in the next one.